You work around it every day. And even though the signs are everywhere, it waits patiently. It's waiting for you to take a shortcut that just might get you killed, or make a careless move that gets a finger crushed, or take a wrong step that leads to a bad chemical burn. We're talking about hazards. Simply put, danger. The chemical and physical dangers to your health and safety that you have to be on the lookout for every day. But they are dangers that you can face with confidence because of the hazard communication training that Gray Wolf Drilling is providing for your safety. We'll begin with chemical hazards. And that training starts with your rig manager. Your rig manager keeps a complete list of all the hazardous chemicals on your rig in something called the Material Safety Data Sheets Binder. You'll hear it called MSDS for short, and it's located at the Employee's Right to Know station. The MSDS is packed with all of the valuable information you'll need to help you work safely around chemical hazards.
You need some protective gloves, safety goggles.
You'll find the name of a chemical in the MSDS and what company makes that chemical. But it also has product information and will tell you how to safely handle a chemical, along with rules for exposure limits to substances like, for example, mud chemicals. The MSDS will also tell you what kind of personal protective equipment or PPE is required to work safely around a chemical hazard. Things like a respirator, rubber gloves, and a rubber apron, splash-proof goggles, and a face shield. All of these can be required PPE for mixing various chemicals at the mud pit. The MSDS also explains how to handle and clean up a spill, and what kind of first aid you may need in case you come in contact with a chemical. Okay, so far you've learned how the MSDS identifies chemical hazards and the PPE you need to get the job done safely. Your next step is to learn how to read and understand what labels mean on chemical hazards. A label will name the chemical, its hazards, and who to contact in case of an emergency. You'll also notice a series of colors and numbers on the label, and we'll begin by explaining what those colors stand for. White will show you either the kind of PPE you'll need to work safely with the chemical or the specific hazards for that chemical. Blue signifies both the immediate and long-term health risk of the chemical. The yellow section stresses reactivity, how the chemical will react if it comes into contact with other chemicals or water. Finally, the red section signifies flammability, or how easily the chemical will burn. The numbers you'll be dealing with on a label are 0 through 4, with 0 being a minimal risk. The number 1 means you are at a slight risk, 2, a more moderate hazard, 3, a serious risk, and finally 4, being a severe hazard. Overall, it's a pretty easy system, and here's an example of how it works. You'll notice on this label, PPE requirements are shown near the white section. In the blue, the health hazard associated with the chemical is rated as a number 2, or a moderate hazard. The reactivity in the yellow section is listed as serious, a number 3. And finally, the flammability level in red is a number 4, so it's severe. You also need to make certain chemicals are stored neatly and put away at all times when not in use. Sloppy storage can cause chemicals to mix together and react with each other, becoming a real danger. Now that you've learned how you and your PPE work together to protect you from hazardous chemicals, it's time to learn how to keep those hazards from getting inside your body. Chemicals can enter your system in 4 ways: by absorption, inhalation, ingestion, and by injection. You should always remember to avoid prolonged skin contact with hazardous chemicals. When the job is done, it's a good idea to wash up thoroughly, just to be safe. And PPE is not an option. Always wear the appropriate PPE recommended in the MSDS when working with chemicals. And you'll also need to be careful to avoid breathing airborne hazards like chemical fumes, dust, and smoke. Some powdered mud mixes are especially dangerous and are easily absorbed into your bloodstream through your lungs. A respirator is always required PPE at all times when you're mixing mud or caustics. Also, take care to wash your hands and use good hygiene often during your tour. Dirty hands may mean you getting more than just that sandwich into your stomach. And never leave food or drink uncovered for long periods of time, as it can quickly absorb toxic dust or vapors. Just be certain to cover your food until you can finish your meal. And remember, no eating or drinking is ever allowed in or near the mud pits. You'll also need to stay out of the line of fire of the pressure washer stream at all times. It packs enough power to quickly rip your skin wide open and inject you with a dose of dirty water laced with bacteria and chemicals that could lead to dangerous infections. Some team members have almost lost an arm or a leg because these infections were left untreated. So if you are injured, report it to your rig manager and get help immediately. And finally, if you have to pour a chemical into a container like a 5-gallon bucket, always label that container and dispose of it properly once your work is done. It's an OSHA violation not to properly label a chemical in a container, and a real danger for your rig team members. That brings us to the physical hazards you have to work with every day. Your rig manager or driller will tell you about any physical dangers you may be facing during a job safety analysis, or JSA. He'll also tell you what kind of PPE you'll be required to use. Working safely around heights and with electricity is always something that should be a top priority. Just remember that great hazard communication training starts with you. So if you don't know how something is done or how to protect yourself, don't be afraid to ask questions. Talk with your rig manager. Consult your MSDS often. And use all of your hazard communication training every day to help get you and your team home safely.